Please respond to roll call. 1. Yes, ma'am. 2. 3. Present, ma'am. 4.
Yes, ma'am.
5.
Present, ma'am.
6. Yes, ma'am. 7. 8. 9.
Present, ma'am.
10.
Present, ma'am.
11.
Yes, ma'am.
12.
Present, ma'am.
13.
Present, ma'am.
14.
Yes, ma'am.
15.
Yes, ma'am.
18.
Yes, ma'am.
19. Yes, ma'am. 20. Yes, ma'am. 21. Yes, ma'am. 22. 23. 24.
Yes, ma'am.
25. Yes, ma'am. 27. Yes, ma'am. 28. Yes, ma'am. 34. 35. 37. Yes, ma'am. 39. 46. 48.
Yes, ma'am.
50.
Yes, ma'am.
51. Yes, ma'am. 52.
Present, ma'am.
53. Present, ma'am. 54. 55. 57. Yes, ma'am. 59. Yes, ma'am. 60. Yes, ma'am. 62. 63.
Yes, ma'am.
65.
Yes, ma'am.
66. 67. Yes, ma'am. 68.
Yes, ma'am.
69. Yes, ma'am. 70. 71. Yes, ma'am. 72. 73.
Yes, ma'am.
74. Yes, ma'am. 75. 76. 77.
Yes, ma'am.
78.
Yes, ma'am.
79.
Yes, ma'am.
80.
Yes, ma'am.
81. Yes, ma'am. 82.
Yes, ma'am.
83. 84. Yes, ma'am. 85.
Yes, ma'am.
86. Yes, ma'am. 87. Yes, ma'am. 90. 91. Present, ma'am. 6.
Present, ma'am.
24.
Yes, ma'am.
27. 2. Yes, ma'am. 80. 34. You have the points of Sylvia Plath?
Yes, ma'am.
So we will start with Lady Lazarus. What do you know about Sylvia Plath? Plath as a poet, also as a person, an individual. Do you know anything about her life?
I like it.
So when you will read the poems and the interpretations before reading the poems, you can just Google the author, the poet, and read about the poet's life. Sometimes poets' biography is not that important in interpreting the poems, because when we explain the lines, we have certain liberty to view the lines, the poem, the attitude that is expressed in the poem from our own perspective. And we can associate so many things, the symbols, we can independently think of the symbols and their meanings. But Sylvia Plath's life is very important to read her poems, because Sylvia Plath belonged to this group of poets who wrote confessional poetry. If you have time, Google it at home, confessional poets. Some American poets in the 1950s, they started writing this confessional poetry. And some of them were Sylvia Plath, Robert Lowell, Anne Sexton. They were some of the confessional poets. So the confessional poets, while reading the poems, we try to look for the relations between the speaker, the ideas expressed by the speakers in the poems, and the poet's own ideas. We search for a link between the poet's life and the speaker's life in the poem, right? So the confessional poets, so confessional, the term itself tells us about what it is. They confessed in their poems. They talked about their life, their sufferings, mostly their sufferings, their traumas, especially in Sylvia Plath's poems, their psychology, their personal life. They even talked about issues like marriage, divorce, mental disorder, all the taboo things. They talked about all those things in their works. So in Sylvia Plath's poems, you will find a representation of her own trauma, her own sufferings. Though we always think that the speaker is different from the poet. The speaker is a different entity. We should not take it for granted that the speaker is the poet. But in Plath's poems, you will find the poet also. So here, you will find autobiographical elements, at the same time some imaginary elements, a mixture of both. But all the speakers in Plath's poems, Plath herself was the model for the speakers in her poems. You will find lots of autobiographical elements. So the poem that we will read today, Lady Lazarus. And probably you know that Sylvia Plath committed suicide at the age of 30 or 31, 32. And her husband was another famous poet, Ted Hughes. Later you will also read Hughes' poems in 20th century poetry, probably next year, in the 4th year. So, Ted Hughes was an abusive husband, and their married life, it was not a happy one, and Sylvia Plath suffered for it. And you will find many instances in her poetry, in her work. And from the very beginning, she suffered from clinical depression. And she committed suicide. That was not the first time she attempted suicide. Before that, she tried for several times. So, Lady Lazarus, the title, there is an allusion, a biblical reference, Lazarus. Lazarus was someone who was resurrected by Jesus. He died and then he was resurrected. And the title is Lady Lazarus. Perhaps the speaker or the poet is talking about herself. She is the Lady Lazarus, the female version of Lazarus, who died and then was resurrected, came back to life. So, this poem has a specific structure. There are many stanzas. Each stanza contains 3 lines. The first 3 lines, the opening stanza, I have done it again. 1 year in every 10, I manage it. The first stanza, it will seemed confusing that what she meant by saying that I have done it again. What did she do?
Tried to kill herself.
Yes,
Tried to kill herself.
yes, trying to kill herself. This act of self-killing. So I have done it again. The speaker is talking about the death, the suicide attempt. I have done it again. 1 year in every 10, I manage it. If she is 30 years old, she tried for 3 times. So 1 year in every 10, I manage it. A sort of walking miracle. She considers herself a sort of walking miracle. She tried to die, but she did not. She came back to life. And her being alive, it seems to her as a miracle. She is a walking miracle. Because she is Lady Lazarus. My skin bright as a Nazi lampshade. Here is a comparison. The speaker is talking about her skin and compares it with Nazi lampshade. So the Nazi, Holocaust, the Second World War, it talks about the genocide. When the Jews, the European Jews, they were mercilessly killed. And the way they were being tortured at the concentration camps. There are many concentration camps. If you are interested in war novels, there are lots of novels, lots of romances also, set in those days. That in the backdrop of that Second World War, you will find the vivid description of the concentration camps, how they used to live there. There are some survival stories also. So if you're interested, you can read some of those. So they were brutally tortured by the Nazis in those concentration camps, and their skin was used to make lampshade. So here the speaker, she is talking about her own suffering. It's about a person. It has nothing to do with the Holocaust. Holocaust is a different thing.
But it seems a bit insensitive for her to bring Holocaust for her own personal.
Perhaps it tells us about the intensity of her suffering, that she suffered that much, the depth of her suffering, that she compared it to that Holocaust, that mass suffering. Her suffering as a person, it was not a trivial thing. Yes?
Can be related to the lesson like the why and the practical activities and the life
Yes, we find white here. Probably next stanza. There is mention of white, the color white. So her skin bright, probably white, not full of light. So that
her being partly German and Jewish makes it not as insensitive.
makes it not as insensitive.
Isn't insensitive for her to use the Nazi Holocaust.
Is Cinderella's father was a German. Her father was a German and her mother, her origin was Austrian. She was an Austrian. And her father was a German. There is another poem, Daddy, where you find this Jew, this German thing again. And that is also about her father too. So whether it's insensitive or not, we do not know. But we know that her suffering, it was too much for her, unbearable. Perhaps that's why she considered to compare it with the Holocaust, the sufferings of the Jews. And perhaps through this comparison, she wanted to draw some attention that the individual sufferings, sometimes people like to remain indifferent to individual sufferings because we do not know how the other person is suffering, to what extent. Only the person who is suffering, that person can understand. The other people cannot. So perhaps the way she was going through the agony, her own trauma, she was unable to express it. And she is just drawing the attention that it's her suffering is as important as the sufferings of the Jews, the way they suffer. And there is another thing, the Jews, first of all, they suffered physically, on physical level. And then with it there was the psychological suffering too, because they were the captives and they were brutally tortured. But first they suffered physically. And here Sylvia Plath, the suffering she is talking about, we don't think that she is actually referring to physical suffering, the psychological suffering, the psychological trauma. So, a sort of walking miracle, my skin bright as a Nazi lampshade. My right foot, a paperweight. Her right foot, another comparison, it's like a paperweight, something heavy. That heaviness, the burden, the heaviness of her suffering, her trauma, that heaviness. It's like a paperweight. She cannot move. My face, a featureless, fine Joe linen. Her face is featureless. There is no specific feature on her face. Features that help other people identify her. She has become featureless. Her face doesn't express anything. And when it becomes featureless, when the person is dead, you will not find any emotion or feeling in the face. It will become featureless. It has everything, eyes, nose, lips, everything, but still there is no feature because it's our expressions, our feelings. When you look at someone's face, you will see the feelings, not the eyes or nose or other things. So her face has become featureless. Fine Joe linen. Another comparison. So the first one, when she compared herself with a walking miracle, Lazarus was a miracle done by Jesus. He was resurrected to prove that Jesus' power, his ability, that he can perform miracles. So that was a dead person, a dead body, becoming alive again. And then when she compared her skin with the Nazi lampshade, the skin of the victims, the skin of the dead Jews, again the image of death. Right foot, a paperweight. When human body becomes heavy, the dead bodies are heavy.
Again, ma'am, please.
Yes?
Again, could you repeat it again?
When she said that my right foot, a paperweight, the heaviness, the burden. When someone dies, the dead body, it becomes heavy. Again, there we find an image of death, an idea of death. And my face, a featureless death, again, fine Joe linen. This linen is one type of fabric which is used by the Jews in on many religious occasions. Even they make shrouds, linen shrouds to cover the dead bodies. So throughout this the first three stanzas, we find this idea of death. The speaker is constantly talking about death. So, peel off the napkin, oh my enemy, do I terrified? She's addressing someone as her enemy. Do I terrified? So, she's inviting the other person whom she is addressing as her enemy. We don't know who that person is. Could be her husband or some other person, or could be man in general. So do I terrified? She's asking the other person to look at her bare skin. which looks like that Nazi lampshade. Her heavy foot, her heavy, her featureless face. That do I terrify? It's not a beautiful sight. Her face, it's not beautiful. It's something that will terrify the other people. Because it has lost all its beauty and charm because of the experiences it went through. So, the nose, she's describing herself. The nose, the eye beads, the full set of teeth, the sour breath will vanish in a day. The way she is describing herself, it seems like she is describing her own corpse, her dead body. The nose, the eye beads, the full set of teeth, the intact teeth, the sour breath, the breath is sour, the smell will vanish in a day. So it will vanish in a day. And what will happen after that? Soon the flesh that grave gave it will be at home on me. So soon the flesh, the remaining flesh, the grave and the worms will eat that flesh. Will be at home on me. And I, a smiling woman, I am only 30. Smiling woman. Perhaps she is a smiling woman. Probably she is not sad about that death. She has accepted the death. Because perhaps she thinks that only death can save her. There is no one else who can save her from her troubles, her problems. So, and I am a smiling woman. So, the speaker definitely is a female, a smiling woman. I am only 30. Still young. She is only 30. And like the cat, I have 9 times to die. And she knows that she is Lady Lazarus. She will come back. She will not die that easily. She had tried before. But she couldn't succeed. So like the cat, I have 9 times to die. This is number 3. The death she is talking about, this is only number 3. What a trash to annihilate each decade. She has marked each decade with an attempt. So this is only number 3. She is hopeful. Probably some. What a million filaments the peanut crunching crowd shoves in to see. Them unwrap me hand and foot, the big striptease. Gentlemen, ladies, these are my hands, my knees. So, she's addressing someone. It seems like it's a show. And there is a crowd who are watching, the people who are watching her, who are watching her suffering, who are watching her featureless face. So, what a million filaments, the peanut crunching crowd, there is a crowd, shoves in to see. They came here to see, probably to enjoy. Perhaps they are interested in seeing what type of woman she is, that she is still smiling, she is trying to die and then she is coming back again to life. And perhaps they have found some pleasure in seeing her sufferings. So, the peanut crunching crowd, she is kind of mocking that crowd, the voyeurs. Shoves in to see them unwrap me hand and foot, the big striptease. It feels like a big striptease. And then she's addressing them, the gentlemen, ladies, these are my hands. So look at those, these are my hands, my knees. I may be skin and bone. Nevertheless, I am the same identical woman. I am that same woman. Perhaps now it is difficult for the people to identify her because of the featureless face, the heavy feet and other features of her body. She looks like a corpse. Perhaps she's talking about the dead body, that she's still dead. So these are my hands, my knees. I may be skin and bone. Now I have only skin and bone. I have nothing else in my body. But still, I am the same identical woman. And here probably she's talking about the soul. So the death we are talking about, we have found death in Emily Dickinson's poems also. And the death we found there, again that was not also physical death, the actual death. That can be a metaphorical death, the death of the soul, the spirit, or the death of an idea. When the speaker said that someone died for beauty and someone for truth, that might be the death of an idea, idealism. So here again you find this death, but nevertheless I am the same, identical woman. The first time it happened, I was 10. So the first time when it happened, the first attempt, when she was supposed to die, she was only 10. The first decade, she was only 10. It was an accident. That was an accident. Perhaps that was not her intention, but it happened. But then she was rescued. She came back to life. The second time, I meant to last it out and not come back at all. So the first attempt was an accident. But the second one, she meant it. She actually wanted to die. She did not want to come back. I meant to last it out and not come back at all. I rocked shut as a seashell. Another comparison. Like a seashell, hard seashell. She rocked herself shut. She shut herself in her body. They had to call and pick the worms of me like sticky parts. So, next stanza is very important for explanations, of course. Dying is an art. Like everything else, I do it exceptionally well. Our speaker considers herself an artist. If dying is an art, she is a skilled artist. And she does it exceptionally well. Because this is not her first time. She is an experienced one. So, dying is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. So, this dying, perhaps she is talking about the physical death also, since she has tried for several times. At the same time, when will people attempt suicide? When the soul dies. When the person has nothing to live for. When the person has no hope, no love. It is nothing in their life for which they can continue living. So when the soul is dead, then they will feel no interest in keeping their physical body alive. So dying, it's an art. She is already dead. Like everything else, I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I have a cold. So the way she tries to die every time and then she comes back, she's talking about the experience.
Yes. But ma'am, that will make her the worst kind of artist because she tried 3 times, yet she didn't manage to kill herself.
According to her, she's a great artist in that art. Because other people dying, she's taking it as a continuous process. She will die and then she will come back. That's how she will make it an art. Other people, they die. They just die and then that is the end of their life. There is no art there. And perhaps she's smoking. She's smoking herself, her actions, her death, or those death attempts. So dying is an art. She's not actually considering herself an artist. She's mocking herself. That it's an art. It has become an art. She tried it so many times. Now she does it exceptionally well, and she knows that she'll be back. She's Lady Lazarus. So she has made it an art. So I do it so it feels like hell. And the way she dies, she tries to die every time. She goes through the actual experience, the hellish experience. It feels like hell. I do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I have a call. It's easy enough to do it in a cell. It's easy enough to do it and stay put. It's the theatrical, come back in broad day, to the same place, the same face, the same brute, amused shout. But when the problem or the actual agony is not in that act of dying or trying to die, but in coming back. So it's easy enough to do it in a cell. So it's easy enough to try to die. But it's the theatrical comeback in broad day to the same place. She's calling it theatrical comeback since it's like a show. In the previous stanzas, the way the speaker is talking about herself, she's showing her body parts. So these are my hands or my knees. That it's like a show. And people are here to watch her. And it's like her job is to amuse the crowd. And that's why she's mocking. She's making fun of it. But though she's making fun of it, her experiences, her suffering, that is real. She is talking about the real sufferings. You can call this poem a postmodern poem. It was written in 1962. She died in 1963. Next year. And it was published in 1966. So you can call it a postmodern poem. The postmoderns, there is a difference between, probably I told you, I taught you history of English literature, but there is the difference between modernism and postmodernism. Modernism, it deals with all the modern problems like alienation, isolation, fragmentation, anxiety, and waste of time, communication problem, all the losses, and all the warfares, the First World War, the other wars, also to some extent the Second World War. After Second World War, the postmodern period started. So the modernists lament for the loss, what they have lost. That safe life, loss of faith, that loss of communication, they lament for that loss. They lament for the fragmented life, that it's not whole anymore, it's fragmented. And there are parts, fragmented parts of it, the mere fragments. But the postmoderns, in postmodernism, you will find the same elements, that same isolation. But the thing is, the postmoderns, they don't lament. They make fun of it, they celebrate it. That's the difference. So you know about dark comedy, right? Where you will find, it will deal with some serious issues, but you will find comedy there. They are mocking it, they are making fun of it. But the issues are not that you will find in a comedy. So that's one kind of celebration. They celebrate whatever lost is lost. You will not get it back. So why will you lament for it? For how long? So accept it, make fun of it, that's it. So this poem is that type of poem. Her sufferings are real. That is real. And the intensity, the depth, that is also real. But the way she is presenting herself, presenting her sufferings, her act of dying and her resurrection, she is not asking for the reader's pity. The tone that she uses in the poem, she is not asking for our sympathy. She is just talking about her experience and how she feels or what she feels now, her feelings. So So it's a theatrical comeback. It's like a theatrical comeback in broad day to the same place, the same face, the same brute, amused shout. So in this line, to the same place, the same face, the same brute, perhaps here she is referring to her married life, the same brute. Perhaps she is talking about her husband. It is possible. So she comes back to the same place. She sees the same face, and then she sees the same brute that abuses herself. Amused shout. That a miracle that knocks me out. There are some brutal faces when they see her come back to life. They shout that, what a miracle. It's a miracle. She has come back. That knocks me out. And she cannot tolerate that. She can endure the pains of death. But she cannot tolerate this coming back and this amused shout, a miracle. She didn't, or she doesn't want that miracle to happen. So a miracle that knocks me out. And the next lines, there is a charge. And there is a charge, a very large charge, for a word or a touch or a bit of blood. And that person, that face, that brute, he has to pay a charge, a very large charge, for a word, for a touch, or a bit of blood. He must pay the price. So here, these lines may have multiple meanings. First one, perhaps she is talking about that person. Could be her husband, we do not know. Could be her husband. Or probably she is talking about the doctor who brought her to life. So, they must pay a charge. That is one. Must pay a price for bringing her back to life because she wanted to put an end to her suffering. And they did not let her die. So, bringing her back to life, it means she will suffer more. Her sufferings will be continued. So, life will be more unbearable for her. If she died, that was the end. The death could only save herself. So, the person who brings her to life every time, she is not grateful to that person. So, perhaps he must pay a price. And then, there might be another meaning. Perhaps she is talking about that crowd, the people who watch her suffer. And for the word, the touch, for every bit of her blood, they must pay a charge too. It's not for free. What kind of price? That we do not know. But perhaps they also have to pay some price. And what price? Perhaps the last stanza will explain this. The very famous lines. Or if we talk about this price or charge, perhaps the way she is suffering. The people see her suffer, the people who bring her to life again. They have to pay the price with their own suffering. Probably later they will also suffer. So, but there must be a price. There is a charge for everything. This show, it is not for free. Or a piece of my hair or my clothes. So, her doctor. So, the person, it could be her husband, it could be the doctor also, the physician also. So, her enemy. She's calling that person as her enemy. This her is a German word. It means mister. She's considering that person as her enemy. I am your opus. I am your valuable, the pure gold baby. So here, the comparison that we find in the second stanza, where she gives reference to the Holocaust and those Nazi doctors who used to run medical experiments on the Jews, horrible medical experiments. Here again we find that reference. So that doctor, that is her enemy. This her, H-E-R-R, this her can be her also, H-E-R. Though it's a German word, that person is her enemy too. Why? Because to that doctor, to that person, perhaps she is a guinea pig, an object of experiment. But her life, she as a person, is not something to experiment with. I am your opus, I am your valuable, the pure gold baby that melts to a shriek. She is kind of dehumanizing herself. She dehumanized herself in the second stanza also, where she compared herself to that Nazi lampshade. She was no longer a person, a living person. That was the dehumanization process. She becomes an object. And here, I am your opus. The doctor or the people who used to do experiment on her, she is like their achievement, their creation, their experiment. I am your opus. I am your valuable, the pure gold baby. The dehumanization. She is like the pure gold that melts to a shriek. I crack and burn. The burn, the gold, and give it different shapes. They no longer consider her as a person, an individual with feelings, with desires and passions. Do not think I underestimate your great concern. Again, that tone of mockery. Do not think I underestimate your great concern. You are concerned about me. So I don't underestimate your great concern because I am valuable to you. Ash, ash, you poke and star, flesh, bone, there is nothing there, like the experiment. There is nothing there. A cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold feeling. Again, that Holocaust images and the experiments, the bodies, their flesh, how those are used to make different products or items. Her God, her Lucifer, beware, beware. She is done with talking about her death attempts, her suffering. She is done with mocking the oppressors, the abusers, all those foyers, and now she is warning them, beware. And she is describing them, addressing them as her God, creator, her God, her Lucifer. See the juxtaposition, God and Lucifer, both. So beware. And the last three lines. Out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air.
Wow.
Why wow? Explain. She's so dangerous. Why? What will she do? So when she says I eat men, M-E-N, it's not singular, it's plural. I eat men like air. Do you think that she is talking about all the men in the world? That she is against men? She hates men? Perhaps not. Because usually we do not use the plural. Mankind or human, we use the singular to indicate all the men or women. But when she specifically wrote M-E-N, Perhaps she is talking about some males, the male members in her life would be her husband, first one, definitely her husband, probably her father too. The next poem that we'll discuss next class, you'll find another poem which is similar to Lady Lazarus. The poem's title is Daddy. Probably there are some other people, some other men, and she's specifically talking about those men in her life, because of whom she suffered, for whom she wanted to die. Perhaps she is not against all the men in the world. But at the same time, in this poem, in Sylvia Plath's work, you can always come up with a feminist approach. From that point of view, you can also discuss, if you take some liberty to separate the poem from the poet's personal feelings, then here is a chance and opportunity to interpret it from that feminist point of view. That this is the resurrection of all the abused female. When she says that, and I eat men like yak, out of the ash I rise with my red hair. Is it 250?
Yes, ma'am. 52.
53.
Is she referring to the Phoenix bird in the last?
Yes, here is that reference, a mythological reference. She is like a phoenix here. You know that story. The phoenix, out of the ash, it rises. So, there is no death for that phoenix. And again, this line and the famous lines, dying is an art. That's how she has become an artist. She has transformed into that phoenix. Now there is no death for her. She will die, she will come back. She will be resurrected. She is like that Lady Lazarus. She is like that bird, phoenix. And phoenix, now she has some power too. She is not weak. Through all those processes, through all those experiences, she has gained strength. So out of the ash, the fire, I rise with my red hair. So red hair, again, from the mythological reference, the phoenix, that bird has red hair. So she is comparing herself with that bird, that she has transformed into that phoenix, and she will eat men like that. Again, red hair. When we see an image, a portrait of the witch, do you think they have black hair? Usually their hairs are red. So she is also like those witches with some superpower. Why? That's why you should read about confessional poetry, because
Why are we only thinking that this man, this word is particularly, a particular gender? I mean, there was a time, like these days we try to use gender neutral words, but there was a time when men used to refer to humans in general as well. So if we think that maybe she's referring to the fact that all these people who are watching her suffer but not doing anything, like the show they're enjoying, maybe that's why she is like, this is not men as a gender in general, it's all
the people,
yes ma'am.
all the people who take pleasure in her suffering, who contributed to her suffering, who let her suffer. She cried for help and there was no help. You should read the biography of Sylvia Plath, and if you have time, there is a novel written by Sylvia Plath, The Bell Jar. It's partly autobiographical. All the things that she narrated there, those things actually happened in her life. And it's a very sad, The Bell Jar. BELLJAR.
It's 256. Shut up. 256.
That's the
Both home. Both home.
what's in her mind. There are other things too.
It's
Yes.
257.
She's a
257.
কার ক্লাসে পড়ে?
Himadi sir.
Happy? Okay, we will continue this next time. What's your roll number?
হতে পারে
22? Why were you late? আমি দিদি তো 5 মিনিট পরে আসি যাতে একটু সময় চলে আসি 22, 23 72.